Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to another episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. We've got another coronavirus special for you coming tonight. Even though soccer has ceased, our content continues. The show must go on. Pick whichever kind of phrase you want to use tonight. We hope everyone is staying safe and healthy out there, and we thank you for tuning in, listening, whether it's via our podcast, whether it's via our YouTube channel, or just following along on our website, www.sonsofapitchsoccer.com. I'm your host, Nick Pateras, joined virtually by my good friend and fellow host, Mike Guglielmi. Mike, how has it been since we last spoke? How was your last week?
A lot more of the same, just hanging out at home, being quarantined here and working from home. I got to the office one day because I had to take care of some checks and things like that. But other than that, just a lot of just chilling, relaxing, spending time with the family, getting work done, and I played a lot of PS4, and I've slept a lot too. Not to mention I've eaten a lot. That quarantine 15 is a good term maybe for that, like the freshman 15, as I'm sure
I haven't heard that
I've
yet.
reached that. Yeah, that I'm coining that now if nobody has, because that's I've probably hit hashtag quarantine 15. All right.
I like it. Have you gotten a chance to play any of our listeners or followers in FIFA yet?
I have not. We've only got the one follower on there that I'm friends with, Horacio Gomez, and I have not had a chance to play any FIFA. I've been dominated by other games with the kids being home all the time. They're always wanting to play GTA 5 and car racing games and other games other than the sports. And, Dad gets the low end of the stick on the PS4 now. I need to buy my own machine.
Right, I get you. That's why I started my kids off on the old classics. We're working our way up right now. We're at about the Sega Genesis level. We started with my old NES, and we'll see where they end up shortly. Anyway, Mike, actually Horatio Gomez's name is a great segue. He actually sent us in a question asking us who our top 11 USMNT players are of all time. So we're going to get to that in the second half of the show. He also asked us who are some of the El Tri players, some of the Mexican national team players that we just love to hate. So we're going to cover that as well in the second half. But first of all, if you want to send us a question, if you want to get involved with our show, you can find us on YouTube at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, on Twitter at SOP Soccer, or on Facebook at Sons of a Pitch. And if you love all the swag that you see, the sweatshirt that Mike is wearing, you'll notice him taking sips of a nice mug there with our logo on it. If you love the show, if you want to support us, or if you just want like a soccer pun, Sons of a Pitch, if you just want to walk around with something like that, check out our account on Redbubble. Thank you, Vanna.
Laptop case.
Mike. Laptop
there you go.
Case. Beautiful. So we are on Redbubble for all our swag. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter for all of our content and shows. And additionally, we really want to thank our sponsors for sticking with us, Donovan Food Brokerage and Premium Iceland. I can't say it. Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water. Thank you guys for sponsoring us, for sticking with us since almost day one of this podcast, almost 3 years ago. And if any other businesses or individuals out there want to get the word out, we have sponsorships available both on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So just send us a message on Twitter, email us, podcast@sonsofapitchsoccer.com, and we can share data, share numbers, and talk turkey, so to speak. Mike, that's all the programming announcements I got. Anything on your end, or should we jump into some of the content?
No, let's get to talking some soccer that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are a few leagues that are still playing. You stayed up late last weekend and watched some of the Australian A-League. I think they have since suspended their season. They only had a couple weeks to go, so it's too bad that they weren't able to wrap that up. But ESPN FC actually put out an article this past week saying that the Belarusian League over in Belarus is still going, and in fact, they're growing. Like the Ukraine national television companies and the Russian television companies are actually picking up all the rights to the Belarus Soccer League so they can get something on the air. It's like this huge influx of cash for this tiny little league where it looks like the fans are standing on like high school choir risers. Like that's what it looked like to me in the pictures I saw. Also, outside of Belarus, I read that Nicaragua is still playing, Myanmar, and Vietnam, maybe? There's like 4 or 5 leagues, tiny little country leagues like that are still actually playing soccer. So If anyone can find a feed online, if you're desperate for soccer, you can check those out. I tried finding it, but I don't think I got the time zone and the time change correct, so I wasn't able to watch anything from Belarus.
Yeah, I
What,
looked
what
it
do
up
you
for
think of that,
Belarus.
Mike?
Nothing. Yeah, I couldn't find it anywhere. No streams. I did read that article where they're saying, the Ukrainians and the Russians are picking it up, but I couldn't find anything. So what do I think of it? Look, they're smaller countries. I don't know how hard they've been hit by coronavirus. Um, Maybe that comes into play, but other than that, it's a possibility of just being a possible cash grab. Um, all those places that you've listed, I don't think their human rights are very good over there. So maybe they don't really care about the people if there was something going on. So I don't know. Whatever, it is what it is. At this point, it's kind of I think what's happening is people are so tuned out of sports because the main leagues aren't there that it's kind of pointless. Because I mean, even our our viewership has dropped on YouTube. Our listenership has dropped a little bit as well. It's people aren't focusing on sports. They're like, well, what can I find next on YouTube or on Netflix?
Yeah, which
Oh
next
wait,
show
let's
is going
watch
to binge watch?
right. Well, let me go find a show about a homosexual tiger tamer with and some woman and killing each other and swearing and I mean, like, it's just people are all about Netflix right now. There's nothing going on. People are even done watching the news because it's just constantly the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It is what it is. I wouldn't personally. I think it's stupid that they're playing, but that's my opinion.
All right. Well, that's the last we're going to talk coronavirus in tonight's episode. We're going to move on. Every week I always tune into MLSsoccer.com to see what they've got on their homepage, to see what articles and things they're running. There has been like no new content as of today. Like there are just clips and highlights of videos of old games. Hey, guess what we're going to show this next game? It's MLS Cup 2008 or some like random MLS Cup game or something like that. So even the league webpage is struggling to keep up with content. You're seeing a lot of fluff pieces. Hey, what are these players doing in the off season or the coronavirus pandemic off season? Like, how are they staying in shape? I'm like, I don't want to watch guys work out. Like, that's just me. So I some of the drills and training things kind of interest me because eventually I want to get into coaching when my kids are old enough to play. But no, workout routines just is not my thing, Mike. So I have not been viewing much from the MLS soccer page. I don't know if you found anything different or entertaining.
No, I mean, there's nothing there. It's the odd, look at the highlights from this game or watch the classic replay of this game. But there's really nothing there. So I've kind of joined the crew of tuning out of sports because there's really nothing to watch. Come through and look for some type of information. So we've got a couple things here, some rumor mill type stuff that we'll get into here shortly. But it's not a lot going on. It's just as simple as that.
Well, a few of the things that we maybe have overlooked or had been overshadowed by a lot of the coronavirus news. One headline that I thought was interesting that we didn't touch on yet on this show is that the Colorado Rapids signed their captain, Jack Price, to an extension. So he is guaranteed through 2022 and has a club option for 2023. This article broke back on March 5th, and I'm sorry I didn't see it until now, because I think it's a good move for the Rapids. So Jack Price, he's your captain. The Rapids are rebuilding. You want to have some sort of consistency. Maybe rebuilding is not the right word. Maybe they're ready to compete as soon as this hiatus is lifted, especially the way they finished last season. So they have, in keeping Jack Price and keeping their captain, they've got stability and consistency. Also, he's a set piece guy. He's taken a lot of those set pieces. He had 11 assists last year, only one goal though. But the Rapids had a league high, I think, 17 goals from set pieces, something like that, Mike. Maybe I'm underselling that number, but the Rapids did have a league high set piece goal, and Jack Price taking those free kicks was a big reason for it. So I think this is a great signing. It's awesome that they locked him up. He's only 27 years old, so when his guaranteed contract expires, He'll be 29. They can option him when he's 30 years old, and then if he's still got it in the tank, they can sign him to another 2 to 4 year deal. This is great planning by the Colorado Rapids, and I got to say I've been very impressed with the way their front office has been managing this team over the last year or two. What are your thoughts on the Rapids, Mike, and what are your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, it's a great signing. He surprised me that he's only 27. He looks older. Maybe it's the beard. I don't know. But he being 27 years old, it's he's the captain of the team. You're keeping that consistency from that standpoint, and he's a good player. He's definitely someone who can contribute to the first team, and I think it's big because what Colorado's doing right now with the offseason signings, with bringing Namely in, with Brian Gallivan, bringing him in as well. He hasn't even played a game yet for him, I don't think. They're picking up the right pieces, and they were successful towards the end of last season, and they started out this season pretty well. A couple of stoppage time winners. So I like what they're doing with this signing. More consistency. I think they're going to be competing for a playoff spot. They might be one or two other moves, not DPs, but like TAM signing moves away from being a real contender in the Western Conference. So I like it. He's a good player. It's as simple as that. So a good move from the Rapids. I agree.
No doubt about it. Just a little bit of a background on Jack Price for those of you who don't know. He does hail from England. He came up through some of the English clubs. He broke out when he was playing with Wolverhampton, the Wanderers, and then in 2018 joined the Colorado Rapids. So he's got some Premier League experience, and now he's kind of cementing himself as a name to follow in the MLS. So Colorado continues to build and continues to be on that cusp of that next great thing. I feel like they're where Philadelphia was like 2 years ago, and then Philly had a great year last year. So we'll see what Colorado can do. Mike, the next topic on Jonathan David. This is something that you brought to my attention. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Jonathan David, the striker for the Canadian men's national team, who is playing over in Belgium right now, he has been lighting the world on fire lately with lots of goals over there, of course, till the hiatus. He's doing extremely well for Canada when playing for them, and is kind of being touted as the next best thing since Alphonso Davies. Well, he's currently got some big money moves on the table, and he's looking at the Bundesliga to kind of follow the footsteps of an Alphonso Davies to Bayern possibly, or a move to Borussia Dortmund where Pulisic was at, and Gio Reyna is at now. So that's kind of where he's looking to go. I think it's smart. He's looking at the clubs that have already had success with North American type players that are going to be similar. Obviously not similar in playing wise in the positions, but right. The fact that they did something right with bringing Chelsea into the game, getting Pulisic signed off to Chelsea, and then Reina's just was lighting it up in the few games he was starting to get before this whole break started. So it would be a good move for him to go instead of jumping straight to like a Barcelona or some mid-table La Liga side or Serie A side. Look at the Bundesliga and follow the path that these others have taken, and might do well for him. So I think that's what we might see for him in the summer transfer window. Hopefully he does make the move because he just continues to get better, and he's extremely young. I think he's only like 20, 21 years old. So good future ahead of him, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's only 20 years old. He's currently with Ghent or Gent in Belgium. If Wikipedia is to be trusted, he has 30 goals in 60 appearances with Ghent. That's a goal every other game. That is pretty fantastic. And what's notable, too, he only had a handful of youth Canadian national team call-ups. But with Canada, he's had 12 in the last 2.5, 3 years, and 11 goals in those 12 call-ups. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's doing it at the top level in Belgium and doing it for the Canadian national team. I do like what you said about him kind of following the path of other North American players over to Germany, and I think it's perfect, and I commend the Bundesliga clubs for bringing in guys from overseas, acclimating them to their culture, and then giving them a chance with the first team. Really, you see a lot of clubs in England or Spain or Italy where they'll sign these guys and immediately loan them out and just say, go get your minutes somewhere else. Go get your minutes in Portugal or the English Championship, or go get your minutes in Belgium, or Denmark maybe. And then if you do well enough there, we'll bring you back, or maybe we'll just sell you. They treat them more as assets. Whereas in the Bundesliga, these players are treated more as potential starters. So if you do well in training, if you prove yourself, once you get acclimated, you're going to get the opportunity to start a handful of games in the Bundesliga. And if you make the most of it, then they're either going to sign you to a long-term deal or flip you to a major club somewhere because you've proven yourself. So I really like what the Bundesliga does with these international, especially these North American players, and hopefully Jonathan David is going to make that, is going to be the next one, going to be the Alphonso Davies, going to be the Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, going to be Tyler Adams. Where you play well enough in your mid-level league like the MLS, like Belgium, make the jump and prove yourself. So good luck to Jonathan David. And honestly, the more he does for Canada, like the more he's going to push the United States to be better, the more he's going to push MLS talent to be even better. So I'm glad you brought this to our attention, Mike. Thanks.
No problem. Next thing on the docket here is Chicago Fire FC has announced that they have signed another academy player, midfielder Alan Rodriguez, 15-year-old. So a lot of homegrown signings. I know they had a lot of room on their roster going into this offseason. So they're kind of filling up those 18 to 23 spots with the young guys, which is a smart way to do it in MLS. And this guy, 15 years old, that's pretty impressive. He's already got youth national team experience. He was identified by the Indiana Fire Academy scouting staff. So he's from Indiana and moved over here to Chicago and has been playing for the U.S. national team, played in the U15s, CONCACAF Boys U15 Championship, where they fell in the semifinals to host Portugal. So apparently the kid's 15. He's getting a first-team contract that's through 2022, I believe, 2023 with a club option for 2024. So a 3-year with an option for a 4-year deal is pretty impressive for a young player. Usually you see these kids, these homegrown guys, they might get it signed up to the first team, but they're getting maybe a 1+1, maybe a 2-year contract max, and that's it. Well, they're actually, they see a future in this kid. He might not help today, but they see the future, and they've got a long contract. So what are your thoughts on Alan Rodriguez?
He is, I feel like, the next piece in the puzzle for the Chicago Fire, and what I mean by that is they have signed 8 homegrown guys this offseason. They have signed an incredible amount of homegrown guys, a lot of which have come up from the Indiana Fire, which, man, Chicago did something right in getting a foothold in Indiana before any of the other MLS clubs did, because there is a wealth of talent. If you know about the Indiana Hoosiers, the college team down in Bloomington, Indiana, they have an excellent soccer pedigree. So soccer has been well played in Indiana, and Carmel, Indiana, which is a suburb just north of Indianapolis, is one of the wealthiest suburbs, or one of the wealthiest towns in the country per some metric. And obviously, over the last 10, 15 years, you've got your pay to play kind of pros and cons there. But the people in Carmel, they know they can pay for it. That's for sure. And I know when I played my high school soccer and my high school club soccer in Northwest Indiana, it was the teams from Carmel who were winning every state competition, every major tournament, everything like that. So Indiana is a hotbed of soccer, maybe not to the level of, say, Los Angeles or the Pacific Northwest or New York, New Jersey, maybe, but I'd say it's that second tier of youth development and just having a good soccer culture. I mean, basketball is always going to be the king in Indiana, but soccer is rapidly closing the gap as a close second. So Chicago did a great job there. And it's kind of weird to be praising the Chicago Fire here, Mike. It's not something we've done a lot of in the last 3 years of this show. No. But they're doing an excellent job with their academies and developing these young players. I don't know if they have an official Chicago Fire Academy, in the sense that they're they're developing players at home or at some dedicated training ground. But the partnership with the Indiana Fire, the youth programs around the area, getting Forward Madison in USL League One as an affiliate squad, so they can sign these guys and then send them off to the USL to get minutes. I mean, imagine you're Alan Rodriguez, you're 15 years old, you get your first team contract. He was probably going to get loaned out to Forward Madison, and this guy would be playing against guys in their mid 20s or late teens, at least 4 years his senior, playing against men. That's how you develop talent. So the Chicago Fire are doing something right. Yeah. The counterpoint is they can't scout anyone else, so they have to sign their homegrown guys. But I don't think that's the case in this instance. I think they're really trying to develop youth. And that was my long soliloquy there on the Chicago Fire youth development. I'm actually kind of impressed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have anything. Bring me back to reality, Mike. Tell me something terrible that the Fire are doing, right?
Well, here they're doing a good job with the youth system from what we can see. But again, when you're talking about young guys, you're not going to know for a matter of 3-4 years, right?
Right.
3 or 4 years from now, this kid's he's in contention for an MLS Best 11 spot or something like that, and he's got a nice contract overseas to go to Europe. He's possibly playing for the U.S. national team. Then hell yeah, it was a great sign. They were doing the right thing. Even if one of these guys ends up like that, they're doing a good job with their youth system.
It's a numbers game, like every sport.
Right. Yep, exactly. So, I mean, if, you really can't tell now, but the only thought process that I have, and again, it kind of throws a real wrench into the whole situation with this hiatus, is, the Fire should have had their home opener last weekend, not just the other day, but a full week and a day ago should have been their home opener at Soldier Field. And it's not now. This is a team who I think is people are kind of forgetting, at least nationally wise. I know the hometown fans and the Fire fans aren't forgetting, but this is like an expansion team. This team had so many roster spots available that, yeah, I mean, this season is right now. I mean, they have got to do well this season moving into Soldier Field. They can't afford to set a culture, because I think the first impression is going to be really important for this club. If they make an impression of they go to Soldier Field and they're getting 15 to 20,000 people a game in the cavernous Soldier Field, then that's going to be a problem, and that's what people are going to associate with the club. And they're going to be like, oh, I'm not going to one of those games to go hang out on an empty Soldier Field, right? They got to have a full stadium. They got to have some big-name guys. They got to have a winner on the field. So maybe it's a little too heavy on the younger kids, but we'll see.
Well, their signings, their DP signings, their international signings that they inked this offseason show that they're going to try and win some games now and contend for the playoffs. Then again, every MLS club is contending for the playoffs just because of the level of parity in the bottom half of this league. These young guys in 2 years then can maybe elevate them into not just contending for the playoffs, but contending for a first-round home game. I think that's the plan, and I would be shocked if Coach Raphael Wicki or if new owner Joe Mansueto didn't have a plan that extended past 2 years. So they're moving in the right direction. But you're right. Fill the stadium, fill the parking lot, let's tailgate, let's have a good time. I know when the Fire and the MLS season get back into full swing, you and I are going to be at least one of those games at Soldier Field, hanging out, having a good time, and whooping it up with all the fans. So we'll see what comes of it. But yeah, they're trending in the right direction. You just can't get forgotten. All that hype, all that momentum with the rebrand, with the move to Soldier Field, with the new ownership, with the press conferences from the new field and Soldier Field, you can't lose that momentum. I'll give the marketing team credit, but I haven't seen anything from them lately. So we'll see what they can come up with once the season gets back underway. That's for sure. The last thing we wanted to mention before we get into some of our MLS memories and halftime here, we got an email from one of our loyal listeners, one of the guys who's been with us from the beginning. This is an email from John. He's written in a bunch of times, and we love hearing from you, John. Keep it up. Keep it coming. one of the things that John says is there's nothing more boring than retiring with no movies, no restaurants, and no soccer. I admire you guys for sticking with the show. So thank you, John, for the compliment. We're sorry that retirement during a pandemic is just so boring. But we are happy to learn that John's piano playing has been improving every single day. So John, send us a sound clip of your piano. Maybe we'll feature it in our closing on one of the episodes. But John is still a big proponent of players, playing in closed environments. Players and refs only, TV crews as well. And then let the players make the decision if they want to actually play and participate. I know in the past, John's written in and said, test everyone 3 days before the game, isolate them, and then have them play or something like that. Also, John, as a follower of the Chicago Fire, says, the Fire were finally acting like a real team, and then this effing virus comes along. So we share your frustrations with that. Thanks for writing in, John. I think what you've got is a common opinion that's out there, or maybe not an all too common opinion anymore. Playing closed door games and at least getting something out there for the fans. As a fan of the sport, I'd love anything. On the one hand, it's like, well, it's not my health and safety, so yeah, put it on there go kill yourself for my entertainment. But obviously, the flip side is, this is a very serious thing. There's things bigger than sports. So we appreciate you writing in, John, and checking in and giving us your thoughts on the situation. Mike, anything you want to add before we get into some of our memories here?
No, that's thanks for writing in, John, and let's get into some of these memories.
Excellent. Well, we've been talking about the Chicago Fire. So, of course, as our hometown team, we're out here in the suburbs of Chicago. A couple of my recent memories are from the Chicago Fire. One of them back in 2002-03 when the Fire were playing in Naperville. It must have been fall or summer of 2002. I think it was going into my senior year of high school. We actually went out with my church youth group to watch them play in Naperville. And I just remember this one young guy just sprinting up and down the wings, fastest guy on the field by a mile. And that was a young DeMarcus Beasley. And the next season in 2003, he takes the Fire to the MLS Cup. Another replay that MLS Soccer was showing, billed as they're now billing it as Beasley versus Donovan. Plus, there was like 7 other USMNT players playing in that MLS Cup game. But man, watching DeMarcus Beasley just torch everyone up and down the wings, and that summer of 2002 game was just so impressive. Like I just his speed always impressed me. And then the other memory, again, it's another kind of Chicago Fire-based memory. I was playing in a local rec league my senior year of high school. I think it was like the Northwest Indiana Soccer League. Very creative naming we had out there. We ended up going to the championship game in like the lowest division. I didn't even realize they had divisions of the NWISL. That's how terrible it was. We won our division, but we didn't get trophies or medals. We got a T-shirt that said NWISL. It was the exact same thing as our jersey. It was just a different color because everyone had T-shirt jerseys, right, when you're playing in the local rec league.
Right.
And I can't remember exactly who it was from the Fire, but it was either Jim Curtin or Justin Mapp was there handing out the championship T-shirts to our team. I'm pretty sure it was Jim Curtin because I remember a lot of curly hair for some reason. This guy was like blonde curly hair, and I'm thinking this is the weirdest thing. He has like a blonde afro. Anyway, but I had pulled a hamstring, so I was like the last guy in line, and I'm limping up to go get my shirt, and I'm pretty sure it's Jim Curtin again. He just couldn't get out of there fast enough. He was like, "Come on, kid, get your damn T-shirt. I gotta get the hell out of here." Like this is some like obligatory youth outreach thing that the Chicago Fire made him do, and he just couldn't get out of there quick enough. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to be handing out T-shirts. Like he didn't even stick around for pictures. But that's just one of my memories. Winning the rec league and having either Jim Curtin or Justin Mapp like throw a T-shirt at me and just hustle on out of there with their handler. It was hysterical, man.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't have any anything like that from playing or anything. But when I was in college, actually just out of college, went to a Gold Cup game, the 2009 Gold Cup. It was Haiti versus Canada at the Old Orange Bowl. in Miami. So the original Orange Bowl, not the, the Hard Rock Stadium, and they call the Orange Bowl when the Canes play there and things like that. It was the old ass stadium that was falling apart. And we're actually on the exact same site where Marlins Park is now. So back in 2009, I went over to the Canada-Haiti game, and I had just gotten off work, and I had met up with a friend of mine. And I had to literally leave work and speed across from Fort Myers on the West Coast over to Miami to get to the game in time. And was still fully clothed in like my shirt and tie. Took the tie off, obviously, but go into the game, and they had all of the fans on one half of the arena, right, for the TV purposes. So I was the only person there in the entire stadium, which there was actually a good crowd on hand. It was probably around, I don't know, maybe 25,000 or something like that, which is a pretty good crowd for a group stage game in the Gold Cup. I was the only Canada fan there. The only one.
And it was Canada versus Haiti?
Versus Haiti. Now, there is a large Haitian population in Miami, but I was the only person there that was rooting for Canada. And that is a very intimidating feeling, to be surrounded by 25. Sometimes, you get your buddies over in the corner, you can see some other guys in red and they're cheering when the team scores. No. Dero had one of the most awesome goals that I've ever seen in that game. Comes out, gets the ball, goes down the wing, starts cutting into the box. You think he's going to center it. There's like 2 or 3 guys in the middle. The goalkeeper is playing the near post, like to block the shot away. And Dero just takes the shot anyway and slides it right between the goalkeeper and the post at like an impossible angle. Like he was literally had 1 foot out of bounds. Like it was that much of an angle. And it was just a fantastic goal. That was, that was the year that right after they had won the Gold Cup. I think they won in 2007 or 2005 when Canada won their only Gold Cup. But they had a good squad back then. Julian de Guzman was on that team. Rob Friend was on that team. It was a lot of big names in Canada soccer. And that one was a lot of fun. Another MLS memory that I have is the Disney shootout or whatever they called it. It was a preseason tournament back in probably 2010, 2011, something like that. TFC was down there.
Orlando didn't even have their franchise yet.
Nope, they didn't even have a team yet. And it was just this little tournament that they were playing, and it was the coolest thing ever. It was FC Dallas against Toronto FC, and I was literally, the players would walk out from the building and they would walk to the pitch, and the benches were right there with all the fans. It was just, and there weren't many fans there. It was maybe like 20, 30 people at this thing. For a little bit. Some of the players, Dero, de Guzman, Gabe Gala, long conversations with these guys before the game, after the game. Really, really cool thing. Really good memory that I have of MLS. And, of course, all the other games that I've been to at Toyota Park, it's always fun, especially with the TFC supporters in that supporter section. They have a damn good time. I've never experienced the game with the Chicago Fire supporters down in Section 8, but it's a lot of fun with the TFC supporters. I'll give them that.
I've been in Section 8 for a couple games, Mike. We'll save those stories for another time, though. With that, We're going to wrap up the first half of the show. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, and then we'll be back with our USMNT All-Time 11 after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, soccer fans, to the second half of tonight's episode of the Sons of the Pitch, an American Soccer Podcast. Thank you for sticking with us, and we especially want to thank our sponsors, Donovan Food Brokerage, a food distribution company right here in the Chicago suburbs. For all your food distribution needs, make sure you check out donovanfoodbrokerage.com. Additionally, nice premium Iceland Pure Spring Water. Thank you for your support as well. Without you and without Donovan Food Brokerage, we couldn't do what we do here. And again, if any other business or individual is interested in a sponsorship opportunity or want to advertise your product with our show, we want you to know that this isn't money that we're just putting into our pockets. We're reinvesting into our show. We've bought new equipment, lights, blue screens, microphones, editing software so Mike can put out all of his videos, picks and predictions and things like that. Propane for Mike's trailer for when it gets too cold for him to do it either indoors or hanging out on his deck or something like that. So we do reinvest in our show, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with any potential sponsor that's out there. So that being said, let's get back into it. As we teased in the first half of the show, we had a viewer question from Horacio Gomez asking us to make a video of our all-time 11 USMNT players, as well as either memorable games, maybe the top 5 Mexican players that we dislike. The last part of that one is pretty intriguing, and we'll get into that one. But as far as our all-time top 11 USMNT players, this is a personal list. This isn't some objective thing where we've looked at every USMNT player since we had a national team. I think the first national team was in 1916.
Wait, I started back in 1934.
Oh,
you mean I wasn't supposed to do that? I was just supposed to pick who I thought?
If that's personal to you, Mike, then that's fine with me.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey, remember, the United States, their best World Cup finish was 1930 when they came in third place because most of the footballing world couldn't get to Uruguay in 1930 in time to get to the tournament. There may be 8 teams, and it was a round-robin type of tournament. But anyway, we still took third place. It's still the best finish. Still better than Mexico has ever fared in any World Cup.
There you go.
And that's what we're going with this next segment. So for our for my top 11 USMNT players of all time, a little background. Like I was born in '84. Started playing soccer at age 5. Thank you, AYSO. Thank you, Rockford Soccer Clubs, Rock Run Express, Rockford United. Appreciate you guys giving me a foundation. But my viewing really didn't start until like World Cup '94. I kind of knew about World Cup '90, and I knew that we had a national team. I grew up with the Rockford Raptors, man, and the Chicago Sting. That's who I knew, taking it back. But World Cup '94 was really my first big soccer event. And then, of course, the MLS started 2 years after that. So that's kind of what really brought me in. So that's kind of my time frame from like 94 to present. So for me, my starting 11 all time, my personal starting 11, starting from the back, Tim Howard, starting in goal. The Secretary of Defense, man, his World Cup game against Belgium, a record number of shots saved. Like, he single-handedly kept the United States and every soccer fan's dream alive for 90-plus minutes in that game. Not to mention the fact he played for my favorite Premier League club, Everton, came back to the MLS to close out his career. Just, you read stuff, you love Tim Howard. Like, there's what can you say? He's probably the most talented goalie ever to come out of the United States. I give an honorable mention to Tony Meola because he was kind of the guy that kicked it all off for America being known as a goalkeeping country. Without Tony Meola and the precedent that he set, you wouldn't have Tim Howard going to Man United and Everton. You wouldn't have Brad Friedel going over and playing a couple stints in the Premier League and the Championship. You wouldn't have Casey Keller and all these guys have the opportunities that they have. So it all goes back to Tony Meola. So he's my honorable mention. My back line, Alexi Lalas, Aguchi Onyewu, Marcelo Balboa, if only because he had one of the greatest haircuts. I don't know, sometimes it was a mullet, sometimes it was a ponytail, sometimes it was just beautiful flowing locks. And Carlos Bocanegra. Alexi Lalas, the dude's part Greek, so gets my vote for that, first of all. And second of all, as a kid growing up in Rockford, I was playing defense every game. I was the sweeper on our team. Again, back when teams thought it was still a good idea to play a diamond in the back. So I looked up to him as a Greek soccer player. I even had a poster over my bed for many, many years of Alexi Lalas. Nice. Aguchi Onyewu, the dude was just a beast. Any aerial ball that came into the U.S. box, he was clearing it or he was clearing out the attacking player. Like, nobody wanted to go up against him on a 50-50 ball because you were either getting leveled or you weren't going to win that ball to begin with. Marcelo Balboa helped kind of build that mentality of a tough U.S. defense. I mean, we were winning games 1-0, 2-1. Like, that's how they did it back in the 90s. And then Carlos Bocanegra, watching him play with the Fire, watching him play with the USMNT. He's still involved in many levels of MLS over the years. He's just a consummate professional and a great player. So that's my back line. Mike, who is your defense? What guys did you pick for your goalkeeping and your defenders?
Yeah, so goalkeep wise, I had to go with Tim Howard as well. Doing my research on this, I found an article that actually had Casey Keller as that number one goalkeeper for the USMNT, and only based on the fact that he did not wait too long to retire. That Tim Howard kind of struggled towards the end of his career, especially since he came back to Colorado. And Casey Keller, apparently, by coming back to Seattle, that wasn't. I guess he didn't struggle enough. I don't know, but I can't see him being number one. Now, it kind of to step it back in my soccer, knowledge and my outlook on this is mostly because I didn't watch much soccer before 2006. So I played as a kid, but I was not very good at soccer because I didn't like to run. I still don't like to run. And as you can tell by my physical stature, I'm not one that likes to run a lot, hence why I didn't like soccer as a kid. So anyways, in 2006, when I really got into watching soccer, and in 2007, then TFC got the expansion team. So some of these guys, I've done a little bit of research on them and seen kind of what they brought to the table. But my defenders, I'm going with Alexi Lalas, Oguchi Onyewu, Eddie Pope, and DeMarcus Beasley. So that's kind of where I stand with my back line. I think that's a pretty nice back line. Onyewu was a complete beast back there as a center back, as you said. And then I got to go with Eddie Pope and DeMarcus Beasley as well. It's the speed and the lankiness of Eddie Pope was definitely a strong suit. So those are my guys for goalkeeper and defense.
I struggled with leaving Eddie Pope off the list. You look at a lot of great lists of all-time USMNT players, you'll see Eddie Pope as a top 5 guy. But just for my own personal connection to some of these guys, I just didn't feel that with him as much. But there's no doubt about his impact on U.S. soccer. One other trivia, since you're a big Serie A fan as well, Mike, Alexi Lalas was the first American to play in Serie A. So he's kind of paving the way for a lot of American internationals over there. And again, he's been with MLS ever since its founding as well, both as a player, as a manager, owner, like broadcaster. Now he's done everything. So kudos to Lalas for being kind of the face of MLS. Even if you love to hate him, he's there for you week in and week out.
Yeah, he's definitely vested in the success of soccer here in the USA. So. Even if you hate the way sometimes he's real blunt and all that kind of stuff, I personally love it. But that's you gotta respect the guy in that aspect.
I mean, he's got one of the greatest USMNT quotes of all time. After we didn't qualify for 2018, and he's like, "What are you going to be, a bunch of pampered millionaires or whatever the phrase it was? A bunch of tattooed millionaire babies, something along those lines." One of the greatest quotes to describe any athlete ever. Moving up to my midfield, you put DeMarcus Beasley as one of your wing backs, I guess you'd call it. I've got him in the midfield. Again, we shared my memory of him before the break, but I have him in the midfield along with Michael Bradley and Kobe Jones. Again, Kobe Jones was a guy I just remember when I really started getting into soccer. He was playing for the USMNT team. I think at one point in time, he had the USMNT record for caps and assists, I believe. So he was just a guy. He came out of UCLA. He's still involved in the game and broadcasting. I got to say, I like watching him play a lot more than I like listening to him broadcast. But then again, hey, I'm just a dude in my basement with a microphone. So kudos to Kobe Jones for keeping with it. But I just loved his style. He was fast. He was aggressive. If he ever lost the ball, he always won it back. Or at least took the guy down trying to win it back. You never ever got to pull one over on Kobe Jones, and I loved that about him. Michael Bradley, this is a guy who I know you followed a lot recently as a TFC fan, but watching his USMNT career, I mean, the guy he doesn't stop running. He's been a workhorse for the USMNT ever since he put on the red, white, and blue, and as much as he was a part of that 2018 debacle, he's been a key player in victories over Mexico, Gold Cup runs, USMNT or World Cup qualifying, and World Cup runs. He's such a smart player, and such a workhorse. I've had a love-hate relationship with him, and it's just another reason I got him on my list.
All right, yeah, I agree with you in the midfield, Nick. 2 out of the 3 at least, Kobe Jones and Michael Bradley. And then my third is Claudio Reyna, Gio's dad. I think he's been essential in U.S. soccer, so I've got him in there as well. But yeah, Michael Bradley, just the steadiness, the leadership. Yeah, it kind of fell, everybody's fallen out of favor with everybody after that 2018 team, as has almost everybody on that squad. But yeah, he's always been there for the U.S. picture for the last probably 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and one of the real trailblazers for going over to Europe and getting with big teams and all that, and then coming back to MLS, kind of like Clint Dempsey, coming back in their prime. Now Clint Dempsey was a little bit past his prime when he came back to Seattle, but starting that kind of lead as well. So yeah, that's my midfield. As far as strikers go, I've got the aforementioned Clint Dempsey in there, as well as Landon Donovan and Brian McBride. I think that pretty much is a very, very simple, very simple 3 up front there for the U.S. I can't really fit anybody else in there other than those 3.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the debate, right? Who's the greatest American soccer player of all time, Landon Donovan or Clint Dempsey? Like, everyone else is a distant third. From a lot of what I've read online, from a lot of discussions I've had with other American soccer fans, we all know Donovan as like the face of American soccer for a decade, and Clint Dempsey as well. Those guys came up together. I think they were at the IMG Academy, played in the MLS, made the jump to Europe, came back, finished their careers in MLS, helped the United States to their best World Cup finish in the modern era. It's been great watching those 2 guys there, and Donovan is still involved. Like, he's coaching, he's a player coach of an indoor team out in San Diego, I think. He's doing it. I have McBride on my list as well, not only for his national team contributions, but I loved watching him play for the Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
And there was I remember a game that I went to, must have been 2008 or 2009. We were like 6 rows behind the Fire bench, and I'm screaming the entire game, "Get someone on the far post! Get someone on the far post!" You had about 5 or 6 crosses that just went begging for a final touch in the first half. And then McBride, either he heard me or just his own soccer intellect. I like to think he heard me screaming. He bagged at least one, if not both, goals in the Fire's 2-0 victory, because he was just camping out on the far post and netting them. Simple tap-ins. No one was marking the far post runner, and I'm screaming. I'm like, "I told you to do it!" And the Chicago Fire coach at the time, I forget who it was, I think he was there maybe a year, just kind of turns around and looks at me and just puts his hand up like, "All right, fine. You were right." So I love McBride for validating my screaming at the Chicago Fire coach in that game, as well as what he did on the national level. I think other guys maybe you want to throw in there, Clint Mathis, Strike Force. If you remember, that was what, World Cup? Was that World Cup 2006 maybe? It was like him and McBride, and there was one other player who were like the MLS Strike Force going to take on the world. Like, that was the marketing ploy of it. And it really did work. It helped to build up the MLS. I think Mathis was playing for the Metro Stars, now the Red Bulls.
Yeah.
So I think his impact on soccer in America is enough to get him maybe an honorable mention as far as the strikers go. But who do you have as your coach, your all-time USMNT coach here, Mike?
Yeah, so my all-time coach is Bob Bradley. I think it was between him and Bruce Arena, but I went with Bob Bradley because he kind of kept that upward trajectory, right? After the 2002 World Cup, that was kind of the setting off point where the rocket was ready to take off, and he kind of continued that trajectory. So then, of course, it went downhill after that with Jurgen Klinsmann and Bruce Arena in the second run after Klinsmann already screwing up the World Cup qualifying campaign and where we are now. So I've got Bob Bradley as the best coach all time, with a close second to Bruce Arena.
Yeah, I've got Bruce Arena because I see him as the only coach with sustained success. And again, if Wikipedia is to be trusted here. You've got Bruce Arena has 2 World Cup appearances to Bradley's 1. Bruce Arena has 3 Gold Cup titles to Bradley's 1. But again, Bruce Arena has that black mark of not making the 2018 World Cup. Plus, you got Bruce Arena's whole history of coming up through college ranks, through the MLS, through the USMNT. So he's got all of that. I just don't think that he adapted enough or developed enough young talent to have sustained further success for the USMNT. But I give the nod to Bruce Arena. I give an honorable mention to the USMNT coach back from 1983 to 1985, my Greek brother, Alkis Panagoulias, who is a U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame member, or U.S. Soccer Federation Hall of Fame member. He, if you look up his history, he did it all throughout the entire Greek system and the Greek national team, and then also coached the American national team for about 18 games and had around a 500 record with them. So it wouldn't be a soccer conversation without the Greek connection, and here we had 2 with Alkis and with Alexi Lalas. So that's kind of my memories. But looking at some of the coaches, I found this really interesting to see. Like, you've got Berhalter, Sarakin, Arena, Klinsmann, Bradley. The kind of the postmodern era guys, if you want to call it, the most recent guys. But if you look at before them, Dave Sanson, Bora Milutinovic, John Kowalski. I mean, these are guys. Well, maybe not Kowalski as much. It looks like he was more of an interim. These are guys who had about 500 records with the USMNT, taking them from never ever qualifying for a World Cup between 1930 and 1990, and then kind of starting that momentum of qualifying in 90 and building up a base and getting the 94 squad ready and having them advance out of the group stage. Guys who had winning percentages in the 50s and low 60s. Well, if you look at Arena and Berhalter and Klinsmann, I mean, those guys were in the mid 60s. So not, if you look at winning percentage and you look at the stats, not too much greater than some of these guys in the early 90s. So it's a really interesting perspective, the way the coaching has developed. Mike, I don't know if you got any further thoughts on the coaching and kind of the direction of U.S. soccer before we get into some of your L tree kind of despising list here.
No, not really. The only thing as far as coaching goes, I'm not a big fan of Berhalter. Just not. I think they could have done better. Everybody was clamoring for that hire, because he had done okay with Columbus Crew, with what the resources that they had, and he's familiar with some of the players, but I'm not a big fan of that hire. I think they could have done a lot better, especially with the amount of time that they had. Their success, and for me as well. But it's just kind of the overall physical appearance and just kind of attitude and persona that they have. And for me, the first one on my list is Chicharito. I just don't like him. I think he looks like a little pretty boy who should just get pushed around and knocked around. I think that's going to happen to him here in MLS, and it's not going to end well for him here. It hasn't started well so far with the 2 games. Maybe he gets a quick, a chance to restart that now with this break, but not a big fan of Chicharito. So he's probably my most disliked of the L Tree players, as well as Rafa Marquez. He had come over. So now both of those guys have come over to MLS. Rafa Marquez, if you remember, came over to the New York Red Bulls back, God, I don't know if it was like 2012, 2013, something like that, but he was absolute trash. Like his career was over. Nobody even knew he came back to play here other than Red Bull fans because he was such trash. So I don't like him. I don't like the way he looks. I don't like that, so that's the way he plays. And then Andre Sguardado as well with the long, flowing, curly hair, kind of, I don't know. There's a few other Mexican players, which I'm sure it looks like here, but based on the notes, you've got him in there as well. Not Guardado, but somebody else. Yeah. So tell me, who are yours, Nick?
Well, first of all, as far as players of El Tri that I dislike, all of them and their fans. That's my note, fans. If you want to know what my pre podcast notes and preparation included, I don't like anyone and I don't like any of their fans. That being said, it's nothing personal. It's purely sport. It's a rivalry. Like, we can sit next to a bar and we can drink together and we can argue about everything under the sun. And I can like you as a person. I can just hate your fandom of supporting El Tri. Actually, it was kind of funny. There was a Gold Cup game when my wife and I were dating, and we were out at a bar in Glenview watching it, and I'm yelling, "God, I hate Mexico." She's like, "Shut up. Everyone who works here is from Mexico. They're going to spit in her food." I was like, no, I didn't. I meant the soccer team, honey, and that wasn't enough to cover for it. Did not like their national team, never have liked their national team, never have liked their fans, never have liked the fans' chants, never have liked how a game on American soil sometimes is more Mexico fans than the United States. And we're talking memories here, Mike. I was at the '94 World Cup game in Chicago, Soldier Field, where Greece was playing Bulgaria. Bulgaria ended up winning that game 4-0, an embarrassment to the Greek national team. But in the fans, it was like 30% Greeks and 70% Mexicans. Like that was the makeup of the game. Like, even in Greece, Bulgaria, you had more Mexican fans show up than anyone else.
Was Mexico playing in the next game right after that, like a doubleheader or something? Or
no, they just turned up for soccer. Like, that's what it was.
Wow.
So, like, I don't like anyone, but one of the specific players, one of the guys you alluded to with the flowing hair and the locks, their goalie, Guillermo Ochoa. This guy has been with the Mexican national team since 2005, and I just hate how good he plays against the United States. Like, he could be terrible for his club. He could be terrible when Mexico wins like 4-3 against Costa Rica or something like that, and then he'll turn up for the United States and like block 8 shots or something like that. I can't stand it. Or he'll go out on a hard challenge, knows he can't save the ball or parry it away or whatever, and just level the U.S. striker. No foul, no call, no card, because we're CONCACAF here. None of that's ever going to break for the United States. It just drives me nuts, Mike, to see how good Ochoa plays against the United States. Maybe it comes from a little bit of respect. A guy who's been on a national team, especially as a goalkeeper for 15 years or so, is definitely doing something right. But it's begrudging respect because he's had so much success against the United States team. So that's kind of my thoughts against it. But I do love the rivalry between the United States and Mexico from a soccer perspective. I love how American fans are paying attention to Liga MX more and more. I love how players in Liga MX are looking at the MLS as a destination and not just a temporary paycheck anymore. I love the rivalry between the U.S. and Mexico national teams and federations, and how they're always trying to one-up each other. Maybe not as much as competition, but as building an organization. Like, they're growing the sport in North America, and I love it. And I think it's great. Again, it's a begrudging respect I have for everything El Tri football, El Tri soccer. So that's kind of my take on everything, Mike. And that really covers everything that I wanted to talk about tonight. So if there's anything else you got, go for it, man, or bring us on home.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a friendly. with Mexico. We said that before. We'll say it again. But no, thanks to Horacio Gomez for sending in those questions for a little bit of our content here. As well, listeners, let us know what you want to hear about. We're struggling right now for content, as is everybody in the soccer world or in the sports world. So thanks for listening to us. And thanks again to our sponsors for sticking with us as well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you guys next week.